gospel of Jesus Christ can be summed up in one phrase: find the hurt and heal it. On September the 11th, in Boston, American Flight 11 took off from Logan Airport at 8 o'clock sharp. United Flight 175 followed close behind. Both Boston planes were scheduled to fly to Los Angeles that morning. In Washington, D.C., American Flight 77 also headed to Los Angeles. It took off from Dulles Airport at 8:10. Of the 4 fuel-laden cross-country flights with terrorists aboard, only one remained on the ground, Flight 93. I want everyone to stand to your feet in this building, please. It was just a normal morning when those passengers entered into Flight 93. Now I want you to take your seat back. Do you know what you just did? You just walked down the ramp of Flight 93. You just walked onto the plane and you just sat down. And I'm going to ask everyone in this building to fasten your seat belts, please. Would you do it? Fasten your seat belts and adjust your seats to their original position. Would you do that? Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to take off. Adjust your seat belts. And as you take your seat and you are getting ready for what you think is a normal and routine flight, there are 7 other people that are about to board Flight 93. The first one is a man by the name of Mark Bingham. He's 6 feet, 5 inches, a former rugby player. He's on a national championship team. He had once faced down an armed mugger on the streets of San Francisco. He was a gutsy guy, a risk taker. Also coming on board is a man by the name of Tom Barnett of San Ramon, California. He's a father of 3 little girls. He's an executive with a healthcare company. He's a big man who had quarterbacked his high school football team. Tom was seated in first class next to Mark Bingham. Now coming on board is the third person, Jeremy Click. He's an NCAA judo champion, 6'1", 220 pounds. Next comes Lou Nash, 5'11", 210 pounds, a stocky fireman. Rich Gottago is now coming on board. He's an ex-law enforcement officer. He's trained in hard combat. Linda Grohan is a brave American that's coming on board. She's a lawyer, a brown belt in karate. And lastly, there's a man by the name of Todd Beamer. Todd Beamer is 6 feet, a good athlete. He's a leader of a young corporation representative of software giant Oracle. There are 27 passengers in coach, 10 passengers in first class. Flight 93 is scheduled to leave at 8 a.m. from Newark. There are 5 flight attendants on board. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to prepare yourself because this flight is getting ready to go down the runway. As the plane begins to taxi down the runway, suddenly the plane begins to lift and take off. Flight 93 continued climbing to its cruising altitude. It headed west across New Jersey into Pennsylvania. It was just a normal flight for the first 43 minutes. Everything was going smooth. But 43 minutes after Flight 93 was airborne, something would happen in New York City that would change the world. For at exactly 8:43, the first plane filled with terrorists crashes into the World Trade Center. few moments after the tragedy hit in New York City, a 911 operator receives a telephone call. It's someone on the other end of the line by the name of Todd Beamer. Todd Beamer begins to describe something that's happening in the air in Flight 93. He said that terrorists had killed the pilots. He said that they had been hijacked. He said that the plane began to lean to the left. Then he said the plane went to the right. Then he begins to describe that the plane is tilting down. For a moment it felt like it was going to crash, and then control seemed to come back over the plane. After that plane took another nosedive, it began flying erratically, and there was another outburst. The 911 operator said, I could tell in Todd's voice that he was feeling nervous, but still calm. When the plane jolted, Tom shouted, "Oh God, we've got to do something. I don't think we're going to get out of this thing," Todd said. "I'm going to have to go out by faith." He told me that they were talking about jumping the terrorists that had the bomb. "Are you sure you want to do that?" Lisa Jefferson, the 911 operator, asked. He said, "I have 7 people around me, and we're ready to charge the cockpit. We're not going to let this plane go down without a fight. We think they're headed to the White House." He said, "Before we go, would you do something?" She said, "Yes." He said, "Would you pray with us the Lord's Prayer, and we'll repeat it after you?" We're all standing around the phone. Suddenly, the 911 operator began to lead those who were on the plane in the Lord's Prayer. I'm going to ask you to repeat it after me, just like they did the last few moments of their life. She began, "Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth." Suddenly at 10 a.m., it's 15 minutes from D.C., Todd realizes that something has to be done. The prayer continues, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom." And suddenly, the last thing that they hear, the phone is dropped, and Todd Beamer, with a loud voice, screams out, "Let's roll!" From the rear gallery of a 757 to the front cockpit area is a distance of more than 100 feet. Big men move quickly across the aisles, accompanied by a flight attendant that's carrying coffee pots, spilling boiling water on themselves as they run. Some jump over the seats to get as much manpower to the front of the plane as possible. All of a sudden, all around the airplane is filled with screams and commotions. Flight attendant Sandy Bradshaw is on the phone with her husband Phil. "I have to go, baby. Tell the children that I love them. We're running to first class now." Elizabeth Wayno, who has just borrowed the cell phone from another passenger, is talking to her stepmother. "Tell the children that I love them. Tell my husband that I love him." Someone cries out in English, "Let's get them." A food cart is used to round the door of the cockpit. One of the hijackers attempts to cut off the oxygen in order to quell the passenger's flight. The plane begins to dive. The hijackers shout, "Allah Akbar! Allah Akbar! God is great! God is great!" Papers rustle within the cockpit as hijackers have been fighting among themselves for the plane's controls. "Give it to me," one of them commands, but it's too late. The plane rocks side to side and then flips, streaking down, blasting a hole in the earth 50 feet deep. Thousands of gallons of burning jet fuel spray the trees, instantly scorching the tree line as though a raging forest has just been put out. The airline is completely destroyed, and everyone on board is lost. Everyone on board is gone. And the last words that were recorded from that plane clearly were the words of an American hero by the name of